Have you ever been on a trip? You think to yourself, really wish I could bring my mosaic art with me. Well, I'm here to tell you, you can. Now, of course, there are some restrictions and challenges, but you absolutely can. Having just returned from a trip myself, where I took all of my mosaic things with me and I made mosaics on my trip. And I'm going to share with you what worked, what didn't. Like I said, there were some things that didn't quite work out in my favor so that you can plan and pack appropriately and avoid the situations that happened to me. Let's get to it. Welcome back. And if you're new here, my name is Julie. And on this channel, we talk about tips, tricks, tools, adhesives, materials, and specific mosaic projects, all to shorten your learning curve when it comes to creating mosaic art. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please consider subscribing. Have you ever been on a trip, whether you were in the airport or on the plane, hotel lobby, maybe at some sort of coffee shop or whatever, and you're looking around and you're seeing people crocheting, knitting, maybe they're doodling on their iPad, they're doing needlework, cross stitch, whatever it is, and you think to yourself, really wish I could bring my mosaic art with me. Well, I'm here to tell you, you can. Now, of course, there are some restrictions and challenges, but you absolutely can. Having just returned from a trip myself, where I took all of my mosaic things with me and I made mosaics on my trip. There were some twists and turns, little bit of drama, but I did mosaics on a trip and oh my gosh, it made me so happy. And I'm going to share with you what worked, what didn't. Like I said, there were some things that didn't quite work out in my favor so that you can plan and pack appropriately and avoid the situations that happened to me. And I'm curious, have you ever taken mosaics with you on a trip? And when I say a trip, I don't necessarily mean a trip. It could be on a plane, train, boat, or it could be to your local coffee house. Maybe you're going to your parents' house, your best friend's house. So when I say trip, I mean taking your mosaics, substrate, tesserae, adhesives, tools, physically with you somewhere. We're just using trip as sort of an all-encompassing thing. So in today's video, I'll show you what you'll need to pack to take your mosaic project with you on the road, including your working timeline, prepping, and how to get everything there and back home safely. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Before we get into everything that you need to pack, I will include a list with links down below in the description for everything that I'm sharing with you today in this video. So when planning these mosaic projects that I was going to take with me on a trip, I had to think in terms of when I get to my destination, I will have access to absolutely nothing. That may or may not be true for you. It wasn't true for me necessarily, but I'll get into why you need to have that mindset. When you get to your destination, you may not know what stores are available to you. You may not be able to get a cutting tool because the stores are an hour away. Or if you're going to another country, you may not be able to get to a hardware store, or they may not even have the tools that you need, or the tesserae, or the adhesive. So getting in the mindset of every single thing that I need to make this mosaic, I need to take with me. So we're talking about tesserae, tools, adhesives, your substrates or substrate, and then all of the extra goodies that go along with making a mosaic. Little things that you may not have thought about. We're going to talk about all of it today. So whether you are going on a trip, whether you are going to the park to work on mosaics, you have absolutely everything with you. Think of it as like a little care package that you're putting together. So yes, I am going to get pretty granular as far as what to pack, but as we go through it, continue to think about needing everything with you before you leave home. So to get started, let's talk about materials or some of those extra things that you'll need to bring with you. I first needed to think about my work surface. Now, I wouldn't want to damage the plane seat tray if I was going to work on the plane, or the hotel's in-room desk or a lobby table, or if I'm working in a park or a coffee shop. Now, I want to be able to easily clean up the area I was sitting and working at. So I got 2 paper grocery bags and I cut the bottom out of one of them and then down one of the sides to create my temporary work surface. So the paper is big enough to cover a large area, or it can be folded for a smaller area. The other paper grocery bag will be what I pack everything in, as well as how I'll transport all of my project items to wherever it is I'm going to be working while on my trip. So in a pinch, should I need a backup work surface, I can use the uncut bag as well. I cut the bag down ahead of time because, again, we have to think in terms that we won't have access to things like scissors at our destination. Plus, prepping now is the key to helping you start whenever you want during your trip. So besides bringing the paper grocery bags for my work surface, there are some other things I'll need which you may or may not be thinking about. Okay, so I've got my cut paper bag and then my whole bag, Whole Foods bag, get it? And so I'm just going to put those to the side, and I want to share with you some other things that I've pulled together that are going to help me make the mosaic, excluding the tesserae. I have not gotten to that part yet, but I just want to show you some things that I got. Here's a cute little bottle of Weld Bond, 2 ounces. So this should get through TSA. Fingers crossed. I'm going to leave it in the packaging. Just going to leave it like this. And this is going to be one of my adhesives. So we've got Weld Bond. I also put some gray fortified thinset in a heavy duty zipper bag, plastic zipper bag. And I'm bringing this for a few different reasons. One, of course, as an adhesive. I may have a need for this type of adhesive. You know, we can mix this up to be stiffer, to set up, as opposed to Weld Bond, which is definitely a thinner adhesive. But I'm bringing this not only for the adhesive purposes, but also, should I decide I want to grout part of my groutless mosaic, call me crazy, I will have a little bit here to mix up and create grout. Yes, you can grout with thinset. It's crazy, isn't it? So I've got basically 2 adhesives there. I'm also going to bring, because again, remember, we've got to assume that we know it's not true, but just assume there are no stores where you can get this sort of stuff. So I'm taking just 1 pair of disposable gloves, just in case I decide I want to grout something, or I need to protect my hands. Whatever. Maybe you don't like touching the thinset whatsoever. You don't like, okay, well, now we have a pair of gloves and we're covered. I also have a couple spoons. I'm taking spoons not only to dish out the fortified thinset, but if you saw the video where I shared how to mix up grout and thinset, I shared a number of different ways that you can do that. So obviously, spoon is important. So I will link that video down below in the description if you'd like to learn more about the different ways in which you can mix up grout and thinset. I also have some wood craft sticks. I have some wood toothpicks, and I've got a couple paper plates. Now, if you are traveling by car on your trip, you can get away with maybe taking a couple of these. These are just small little plastic cups. You know, we get these sometimes at the dentist or whatever. But you might want to take some of these if you're traveling by car, and that'll make mixing up your thinset even easier. But one of the reasons I'm taking the paper plates is I'm traveling by airplane. And so I know for sure these things are going to get crushed between my suitcase and my tote that I take. So I'm not even gonna bother with these. So I've got some paper plates, and I will create, if I need to, I will create a small batch of thinset in a paper plate. And of course, gotta have a tool, right? So, well, let me not say that. You don't necessarily have to take a tool in order to make mosaic. Okay, we know all about that. I've done videos here on the channel where I haven't used tools at all to make mosaics. But I bought these nippers. If you saw my last video where I talked about things that I would not buy, including some tools, I am going out on a limb here, and I bought a pair of nippers. Number one, I want to try them. But number two, I'm not taking my beloved tile nippers on this trip because I'm just not sure what the TSA agents are going to consider a weapon. I can't imagine them considering these a weapon. But anyways, I got a new pair of nippers, and we're just going to try them out. So anyways, this is some stuff that I am taking with me on the trip, and this is good. This is good. I'm going to get started with pulling some tesserae next. So for the actual materials, I know that I want my projects to be a groutless mixed media mosaic. So I'm pulling a mix of materials. Items like glass tile, vitreous glass tile, thin ceramic tile, smalty, glass gems, broken plates, bowls and cups, some heart-shaped ceramic tiles, even some plate back stamps, which are always fun. I love using those. And of course, the flower focal, which I not only tiled in a previous video, but I grouted it in a previous video, and I packed it up for traveling. So I'll include a link to those videos down below in the description as well. Now, I'm sure that I'm pulling more tesserae than I need, but again, I'm operating in the mindset of taking everything I might need with me on the trip, so I'm taking extra just to cover my bases. I don't know what stores are going to be at my destination, and I don't want to risk not having everything that I need. Now you may be wondering, how much materials is enough and considered too much? For me, I'm eyeing it. But you can also loosely lay out your materials on your substrate as you're pulling the materials you want to take. They don't have to be laid out in such a way that that's your design, but just in a way that covers the areas you'd like to tile. It's a guesstimate. Now, of course, if the plan is to cut your tesserae into shapes, then I would suggest bringing extra, just to make sure you've got enough. You always have to think about spoilage, so to speak. Some things may break in transit on your trip, or you may cut things down to create shapes, therefore you're going to need more of that particular tesserae. If a particular color or tesserae is going to be your main color, then bring everything you've got, especially if you're going to be cutting down and creating shapes like I just said. And then make sure you pack a little extra to take into account a tesserae not breaking how you'd like it to, so that you for sure have backup supply as well. And since I returned from my trip, I can tell you that for sure I took too much materials, but I was so thankful I had options while I was on my trip. I had plenty to choose from. And it's not like I took a crazy amount of extra materials, but it was enough that I didn't feel like I had to change my tesserae choices from project to project in order to accommodate a lack of my preferred materials. Now, after I grouted the mosaic on mesh flour, I made sure to pack it really well for travel. And I go into more detail on that in the video where I grouted it, which will be listed down below in the description. So for the substrates, I went with 2 smaller framed pieces, each measuring 6 by 6 inches square. Now originally I had ordered a larger 9 by 12 inch wood framed artist canvas, but it arrived after I had left on my trip. But I gotta admit, the 2 smaller pieces actually worked out much better, and here's why. They were easier to pack. They were pretty quick to make, and I didn't feel pressured that I had like a larger substrate to work on, because it turned out I was pretty busy on this trip, and I wouldn't want to feel guilty or make myself feel bad that I brought all of this stuff with me and didn't get to finish the mosaics or even start the mosaics. So it worked out that I didn't get to take the original substrate with me, but instead taking these smaller substrates. Now, other substrate options include wood artist frame panel boards like this, but in other sizes, a wood tray, a picture frame, coasters, cutout wood shapes, ornaments, smaller wood substrates for wall art like a square, circle, rectangle, etc. Now, when selecting a substrate, the slimmer or lower the profile, the better. And this is especially important if you're traveling by plane or cruise ship or train, because everything needs to go in your suitcase or your carry-on. But also, if you're going to be going on a trip where you might come back with more than you left with, you know, hello, souvenirs, then going with a smaller substrate or substrates might be a better choice, because then you can just tuck those in easily here and there within your bags. Part of prepping and packing for your trip is to make sure that your substrate is ready to use once you get to your destination and are able to work. So when working on a wood substrate in mosaic, for example, if your mosaic will be grouted, you need to prep it first. And if you aren't sure how to prep a wood substrate for mosaic, which will be grouted, then I'll include a link down below in the description to a video I did here on my channel which shows you exactly how to do it. But for the 2 substrates I selected, I'm only going to seal the wood, and that's for 2 reasons. The first is I'm not planning to grout these mosaics. As I said earlier, they're going to be groutless mixed media mosaics. So I want the natural wood to show through not only on the frame of the piece, but I also want the wood to peek through when you're looking at the mosaics. So I sealed the substrates using a matte sealer, which didn't give a shine, but just enhanced the wood color, basically. You can also paint your substrate if you like, but as I mentioned, I just chose not to. Another thing I did to prep the substrates was to adhere my hanging hardware on the back, which you've been watching me do here. I like to do this ahead of time before tiling, and if you'd like to see what your options are, and you do have options, then I'll include a link down below in the description to a video I did here on my channel where I shared 5 simple ways to hang your mosaic art. So for these particular substrates, I used D-rings for picture hanging wire and installed them evenly on both sides of the backs of the frames, about 2 inches down from the top. If you decide on this type of substrate, be careful when installing your hardware that you install the D-rings within the area where the frame is on the front. That area is thicker, which is what you need because you don't want to risk your hardware or, like your screws or your nails poking through the front of your substrate. Hold off on adding the picture hanging wire until you get back home from your trip. However, if you're making the mosaic for someone at your vacation or trip destination, make sure you take the picture hanging wire with you on the trip. To pack all of these items so they arrive safely at your destination, I packed everything inside of the uncut paper grocery bag. So the paper grocery bag is somewhat stiff, and it's going to act as a protective shield. And then I put the bag in one of my vacuum seal travel bags. Now, I love these things. I swear by them. I will never travel without them again. They come in different sizes, and I got the pack which has the small and medium size, and they fit in both of my suitcases. They're amazing and have allowed me to travel with a lot more stuff. And I'll link the exact set that I got down below in the description. And it comes with a hand pump, which is super lightweight and compact. And of course, I always bring it with me on trips. If you want added cushion around your mosaic substrates and tesserae, then you can also pack some of your clothes into the vacuum bag first before pumping the air out. Try to avoid bringing in things like bubble wrap when you've got your clothes, which could act as a great cushion or bumper, within the bag, within the vacuum bag. So everything went in one of the vacuum bags and was ready for travel. And as I mentioned, I just returned from my trip where I took these mosaic projects with me, and I can share a few additional things with you. First of all, I can't tell you how excited I was to have my mosaic art with me on a trip. Being able to, or just knowing that I had things with me that I could create mosaic art it was crazy. It was awesome. It didn't go according to plan though. And as I mentioned earlier, there were some problems and very avoidable in the future, and I'm going to share this with you. So the problems were when I went through TSA. First saw my wheeled glass nippers and took them out, and they said that they were too long. The wheeled glass nippers were 12 inches. And on the TSA website, it does say tools such as hammers, screwdrivers, wrenches that are taller or longer than 7 inches will not be permitted. The TSA website also says the ultimate final decision does rest with the TSA agents. So they asked me what it was for. I told them, wheeled glass nippers are not sharp. The real magic to them is the tension they create when the wheels come together and there is some sort of tesserae, in the middle. So it's not that they were sharp, but ultimately it was at the discretion of the TSA agents. And they gave me two options. I could go, pack them in my bag, check my bag, go back through the line, and then, pick up my bag at the destination. I was traveling over the July 4th holiday. The lines were insane. Even in the TSA pre-check line, the lines were crazy. And I also had to think about, what does my airline charge for a checked bag? I don't check my bags. This was not an international flight. It was domestic within the US. So I don't check a bag. And it was going to cost me more to check my bag at my airline than it cost me for those wheeled glass nippers. Now, I was curious. I was not sure if I was going to be able to bring the wheeled glass nippers with me because the TSA website is a little ambiguous. Let's be honest. We're in a small niche. Mosaics are a small niche, or working with glass, small niche. So it doesn't specifically say, oh, you can't bring, wheeled glass nippers or tile nippers. I think we just have to now assume that the answer is more than likely no, but again, it rests with the TSA agent. But anyways, it was going to cost me more to check a bag than to surrender the nippers. And so I surrendered the nippers. And I won't say it gutted me. It made me sad. It made me sad that something I own, that's not a, let's be honest, it's not a spear, it's not a gun, it's not a, some of those things like, come on, what are you thinking? Of course you can't bring that on a plane. But it just made me sad that I was walking away from the TSA area and something I own was back there and I'm never going to see it again. Now, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to bring the nippers, which is why I bought a new pair. You guys know I love my Lepinit wheel glass nippers. I did not bring those with me. That was not a risk I was willing to take. So I did get a new pair, which cost less than $20. And so it was cheaper for me to give up the $20 tool than to check my bag with the airline. It's ridiculous. But anyways, so, and I was going to a destination where I knew I could get another pair of wheeled glass nippers. Anyways, so some lessons learned here. Check your tool in your suitcase. If you don't have that luxury, order a tool to be delivered to your final destination, or depending on where you're going to be going, go to a store and get the tool that you need once you're at the destination. And of course, then you need to plan for how are you going to get your tool or your tools home. And you've got to think in that same sort of way. You can put it in your bag and check your bag. You can ship it to yourself back home. Or you can leave the tool at your destination and just sort of be done with it, and you got your use out of it and you'll just cut your losses. That's what I did, so to speak. I left my tool at the destination, but it's in safekeeping and I will be able to use it again the next time I go back. And just as a reminder, everything that I've shared with you today and have shown you in this video will be listed and linked down below in the description. So as we talked a little earlier, you want to select a substrate that is doable. I'm sure we've all heard of the expression of your eyes are bigger than your stomach when ordering a menu or maybe going to the buffet or whatever. This is the same sort of concept when it comes to planning what size substrate you're going to take with you on your trip. So one way to gauge what size substrate to bring is, let's say the trip, the destination you're going to is going to consist of you sitting on a porch most days, listening to the beach waves or, listening to the birds or whatever the case may be. Basically, you're going to have more downtime than you're going to have going to do this and see that and all that sort of stuff. Then you might want to bring a bigger substrate. But you also want to think about, is it going to fit in your suitcase? And the bigger the substrate, the more materials you need to bring, the more adhesive you need to make sure you have. So you do want to think about your itinerary at your destination. Will it allow you to work on a bigger mosaic? Now, there's no shame if you take a bigger mosaic and you don't get to work on it at all, or let's say you start it but you don't get to finish it. Okay, no problem. Be realistic as far as the time you can allow to work on the mosaic. So that's why in the beginning when I said I originally ordered a larger substrate and then I had to kind of pivot and take the smaller ones, it actually really worked out, because it turned out my schedule was a little more loaded than I was expecting, and I did want to make the mosaics while on the trip, just so I could like prove to myself it can be done and I can do it again. And so I just needed to see this idea come to fruition. So when I worked on my mosaics, it was about in the middle of my trip, which was good. They went quickly because they are 6 by 6 inch little squares, and it went quickly. In fact, I made one, and then for the second one, I had every intention of starting it where I was staying and then taking everything with me. I had discovered this really beautiful park in the city where I was staying, and I wanted to just go do mosaics at the park. But I got into such a flow of tiling that before I knew it, I was done, and I hadn't even packed everything up to take it to the park. So now I have something to look forward to the next time I go to that destination and the weather is cooperating. Now, my workbench, so to speak, when I was on this trip was a wood TV tray table, and it was set up in front of the living room window to get that natural light, and it wasn't necessarily in the way of our living room where we were at, but I felt like it was kind of in the way, if you know what I mean. But because we had packed everything in that paper grocery bag at the beginning of this video, it makes things much easier to get stuff out and put away, whether you're working at your destination, a coffee shop, a friend's house, a park, whatever. So by tiling the mosaics in the middle of my trip, that gave the adhesive more than enough time to dry so that when I was ready to pack things up in order to bring stuff home, there was no problem with any sort of loose tesserae or wondering if things were going to make it home okay. And speaking of getting things ready, I'm obviously traveling home a little lighter because the nippers didn't come home with me. But also now that more than half of the materials have been adhered to the substrate, everything packed a little more flat and compact. I still packed everything that was going home with me in the paper grocery bag and then the vacuum bag, just as I did for the flight out. Now, the paper grocery bag not only supports what's inside, but it also keeps everything like sharp corners from the substrates, or let's say there might be some sharp tesserae, from busting through and making a hole in the vacuum bag. And once I got home, I pulled everything out of the vacuum bag. Everything was safe and intact. And I finished off the mosaics by signing my artwork, right? We always got to sign our artwork. And then I added the picture hanging wire through the D-rings. Now these substrates are thick enough that I could actually stand them up, let's say on a shelf or a tabletop, but I also want to have the option of just having the hooks and the wire on the back so that I can also hang them up if I choose to. It's hot, y'all. It is hot. Oh, I didn't even say anything at the end of that video. So I gotta know, are you going to make mosaics on a trip? Does that sound exciting to you? Does that sound doable to you? Have you already done it before? Gosh, I can't even tell you the feeling I had that I had stuff with me to make mosaics. It was cool. And then, you know, also, if you're going to a destination like, let's say, a family reunion, or you're going to see your best friend or cousins or whatever, taking mosaics, I mean, you could actually work on it as a group project. That would be kind of cool too. So mosaics could be your thing for a reunion or a trip or whatever. Oh, and if you aren't following me on Instagram, right here, follow me. I post there daily. And if you check my stories, I post about substrates, tesserae, that kind of thing, pretty much daily. So if you are looking for ideas, you know, check that out, because you just never know what's going to inspire you. And we all get inspiration in different ways, but maybe just seeing some different kinds of tesserae that maybe you didn't think about initially, maybe that might be the thing that inspires you. Could inspire a theme for your next mosaic. You never know. So anyways, I so appreciate your time. I'm so glad you're here, and I will see you very soon. Bye. For more mosaic inspiration, check out one of these 2 videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.